Okay, my name's Paul Drury, and I write for Retro Gamer magazine, which means that today's guest for 1 month in 2010 was my boss, because he guest edited Retro Gamer for one issue. Now, whilst that's obviously the highlight of his career, he's also known for doing a few games like Doom and Quake, and we're going to hear all about those. So, ladies and gentlemen, he codes like a demon. He codes demons. His games have killed you countless times, and he has hair to die for. Ladies and gentlemen, John Romero! Hello. Okay, John, I would start by saying welcome to England, but it's actually welcome back, isn't it? Because I understand that you did actually live in England for a short time.
Yes, I did.
Part of your childhood.
Yep.
When was that?
In the mid '80s, I actually came here to go to high school, and so I graduated from Alconbury, RAF Alconbury, and it was awesome. So I got to see a lot of Europe when I was over here. But I never saw Wolverhampton, and it is awesome.
Out there, mate. This is the principal city of Great Britain. So yeah.
We went to the Hungry Horse last night. It was great. But everybody here is really, really nice, so we love the town.
When you were over in England, if it was in the mid-'80s, were you swapping Spectrum games in the playground?
Yeah, no, we didn't, because I was an Apple II person, because I came from California, and so we brought over the Apple II eventually. But my neighbors had the BBC Micro and the Spectrums and stuff. And actually, the BBC Micro was my favorite of that era, because you could mix basic and assembly in the same list.
Oh, well, you heard it here first. Okay, now John has spent 30 years in the industry. This is how we're going to structure the talk today. We have picked 7 games from his huge back catalogue. My good friend Martin Carroll here has found footage of all of those 7 games. So they're going to be playing up here, and I've got some questions to prompt John to reminisce about those 7 games. And at the end of each one, look what we've done here. Okay, at the end of each one, I'm going to say, well, John, was that a joy to create? Look at that chainsaw. Yeah. Or was it sorrow? Okay, can you see where we go with this? Joy or sorrow. Okay, we've got that? Okay, right, so that's it. Okay. Right then, so it's time for the first game, which we're going all the way back to 1984. This is called Scout Search, and it was published in Insider magazine, which was specifically for the Apple II. Sorry, Cider Apple. I just see what they did there.
Yeah, right.
That is brilliant. Okay, right, so this was your very first game. So let's start off. It does involve a maze. So, John, is this inspired by your youth playing Pac-Man?
Actually not. It was, I basically made this game so I could get a game published. Back then it was hard to publish games in magazines because listings were too long for assembly language, which went on and on and on for pages. So this game is mostly basic with a little bit of assembly, and that got me, basically able to publish it. And for me, I just wanted to make something where there's a crazy bear, the bouncing thing.
This is the bear.
The bear, and it's eating scouts. And you're the scoutmaster, and you have to get the scouts before the bear eats all of them. And when the bear touches them, they scream.
That is impressive. Can I just say, given what we've heard about scoutmasters in the 80s, do you think maybe it'd be better to actually risk it with a bear? I don't know. I want to know, is there...
I was in Scouts, actually.
Okay, clearly that's another discussion, maybe with a psychiatrist. Okay, I did want to ask here, is that, whilst it's a simple maze game, is that you spent obviously a lot of time thinking about the backstory. If you look in the magazine, there's quite a spiel. Did you spend your school days kind of dreaming up scenarios for computer games?
Yeah, so I actually got really bad grades in school because I didn't do any work in school. I had notebooks in class, and I drew pictures, and I wrote code for my game, so when I got home I could just type it in and not waste any time. So I have many notebooks full of code, and Scout Search was in one of those notebooks. So when I got home, it took me half an hour to make that.
Oh, that's fantastic. Of course, this was on an Apple II, which I think I can call it your beloved.
Yes.
Apple II. Can you tell us about the day when you finally persuaded your parents to buy you an Apple II? Tell us about that day.
Well, actually, I used to come home from going to stores where they had Apple IIs at, and I would use the store computers, and then I would come home and I would tell my dad about it, and I never asked him for one because they were really, really expensive, like thousands of dollars. So I didn't expect to get one, but he basically ordered one, and it showed up at the house, and I was really excited when it showed up because that was a massive surprise. And I think that, you know, he thought that he was going to set it up when he got home from work, but I ripped that box open, and I got it all set up, and my mom had to like stop him at the door and go, "Don't get mad." he already set it up.
And was that pretty much as soon as that Apple arrived in your house? Were you? I mean, we'd say
I
in
was
this country,
done
bedroom. Did you have that phrase, by the way, bedroom coder? Did America have that, or were you a garage coder? Or
It was actually not in my bedroom. I wish it was like the family computer. So it was in another room that nobody actually was. It was just like an extra room. So the computer was in there, and I basically lived in there. I used to go outside before that, but I was done going outside when the Apple II showed up in the house.
Fantastic. Now, I'm intrigued. We did in this country, we had plenty of listings in magazines. That would be a staple part of a magazine. But it seems to me that you've sort of made quite a good living. Maybe that's pushing it, but a decent. So you seem to get a few $100s. How do you find a nice lucrative niche with this listings?
It was basically with this game, the mixture of BASIC and assembly language kept the listings so small that I could actually sell them. So after this one sold, I think I made $100 on this game.
Yay.
In 1984. The other games were likewise pretty quickly made, and because of this formula, they all sold as soon as I made them. They just, yes, this is a nice small game that we can put in our game issue. So
fantastic.
That's what I did.
Now, I did look at some of these games that you did. Okay, here's some of the ones that followed Scout Search. Bongos Bash, Zippy Zombie, Major Mayhem. I want to say you seem to be obsessed with alliteration.
Yes, I was trying to make the entire alphabet.
Oh, so you skipped to Zombie. I see. Now, which of these, apart from Scout Search, would you recommend us seeking out?
Out of just those,
or any of these very early efforts? Is there some that we should particularly, search out?
Subnodule.
Oh, Subnodule.
That's such an '80s name, Subnodule.
What's that about then?
It's your submarine shooting everything in the water.
Well, there you go. You heard it here first. Subnodule. Okay, right. Well, as we said, after each game, we want to ask John. Okay, John.
All right.
Did you developing Scout Search?
Do I have to pick up
Was
each
it? Was it a joy or was it a sorrow? He's going to think. He's having a thing. You can see this is well rehearsed. Joy or sorrow, John? Joy or sorrow? It's a joy. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. So we start off with the joy there. Okay, now we're moving 6 years on now to Commander Keen. It's not a quiz, mate. Okay, right? We're moving 6 years on, right, to Commander Keen, right? Which I'm glad to see you still like your alliteration as well. Okay, I like that. Okay, is that now you've moved on? I believe this is on the PC. So tell us, what was that transition like from your beloved Apple II to a PC? Was that a big step?
Yeah. So in 1989, I was working on a port from the Commodore 64 to the Apple II, and it was a game called Tower Toppler, which was nebulous in Europe. And I love the game, but while I was porting it, it got canceled by the publisher, and when that happened, I knew 8-bit was done. And this was in 1989, like about February of '89. So I was like, I need to get off these 8-bit computers, Commodores and Apples, and I need to get on the PC, which is just one, it won the race. And so that's what I did. I immediately jumped onto the PC in March of 1989, and interestingly, at that time, when I did the move over, I was like, I worked for like 10 years, really hard to make the best game, and I didn't. I spent all of my time. It sucked that I was in high school. I would have had more time, actually on the computer, and I got done with the 80s, and I had not made the greatest game. So I felt like, great, I have to start all over on the PC. So as soon as I got on the PC, I just dove into it, and within 2 months was back to assembly language, and within a year and a half or so, had made Commander Keen.
I presume it's like your homage to Mario games.
Yeah, definitely.
And isn't it a predecessor called Dangerous Dave? Again, that alliteration.
Yeah, that's right.
You did a game called Dangerous Dave. So how does Dangerous Dave link to this Commander Keen?
So Dangerous Dave was a game I made on the Apple II in 1988, and it was totally a Mario-inspired game, a platformer, and I basically made a PC version in 1990. In August of 1990, I ported it to the PC. I did it in 1 month. John Carmack and I both had to. I was basically starting the game disc. It was like a bi-monthly get a game on a disc kind of subscription. And so for the promo disc that we were going to send out, we needed to have 2 games, and we had to make them both in 1 month. So John's job was to port his game from the Apple II called Catacombs, and I decided to port Dangerous Dave from the Apple II, and basically did that in 1 month. And unbelievably, that DOS version of Dangerous Dave has lived on. Like there's 9 versions of Dangerous Dave now. There's sequels and everything, and I'm actually about to release an iOS and Android version of Dangerous Dave.
Dangerous Dave comes back. Okay, I wanted to ask you about this. Is that there's a huge amount of sequels coming to this? I think it goes up to 7.
There's 7 Commander Keen games.
So
yeah.
You're very prolific. Is that something that's important to you, to get stuff out there?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's important to get games out. You learn with every single game. Actually, whenever I make a game, I always try and do something new in it. I'm trying to learn something about making, like whether it's programming or design. So every game I can say, in this game, I tried to do this, you know. With Commander Keen, the reason why there are so many Commander Keens is we release 3 at a time. So when we released, there are 7 of them. So there was a Commander Keen 1, 2, and 3 that were released at the same time. Number 1 was shareware, so it was free. And if you liked it, you would buy the other 2. And so we had to make all 3 at once. And then 4, 5, and 6 was the next set that we did. But we also did a one-off Commander Keen called Keen Dreams. And so that game came out in 1991, and it was kind of a one-off that we did for the company that we were working for.
Now, you start using the word "we" because you were working
in
with
software. John Carmack, Adrian Carmack, and Tom Hall.
Well, particularly Carmack, obviously. I just wondered, what was your first impression when you first met John Carmack? What did you make of it?
Well, I knew that I was looking for a programmer for this new disc I was starting up, and I basically looked at other programmers on the Apple II and saw that John had a game published on the same disc as me in the Apple II department, because while I'm working on one thing, at night I would make even more games and sell them back to the company. And so I saw John had a game on the same disc as one that I'd made, which was called Substalker. And another alliterative title.
You both love submarines. It was a lot of submarines to put together. Okay, right.
So anyway, I saw his game, and just from looking at it, I could tell that it was really well programmed, and asked for him to come down for an interview, and he did, and we had a really great time, and he decided to take the job.
Fantastic. What do you think? You clearly had a good working relationship. What do you think makes a good team when it comes to making games?
Number 1 is dedication. Like, that's super important. It's so hard for people to try and make games over the internet when the other person that they're making it with is not dedicated enough. So everybody being driven the same amount is really important, and that everybody is actually good at what they do. So interestingly, when people look back at id Software and they see, oh, they made these games, they were good games, they came out of nowhere, the way that you would say, Marcus person came out of nowhere with Minecraft. What people don't know is that there was 10 years of making games like all day, every day, for everyone in id Software. So each person had 10 years of game development before we got together. And id Software was the first time we'd ever worked with another person, like any other person. It was always us by ourselves. So it was like 10 years of experience every day, and then we got together, and then we made this stuff really quickly.
Lennon and McCartney. Can we ask you then, so Commander Keen, John, was it a joy or a sorrow?
Yes.
Hey, it's another joy! Okay, now we're on. Thank you, John. Now we're moving on only a couple of years to 1992. This is, I'm sure it needs no introduction, this is Wolfenstein 3D. Wolfenstein 3D is often kind of credited as being like the first-person shooter. You can argue that. But actually, it's not even the first 3D game you did. You've done one called Catacomb 3D. Tell us about Catacomb 3D and how that related to what became Wolfenstein.
I'll just mention in May of 1991 we did Hover Tank 1, which was a 3D game as well. It had a tank turret in front, so it was kind of like a Battlezone Plus kind of thing. And then in November of '92, we did a game called Catacomb 3D, which had a wizard's hand out the front casting fireballs, which also was not so cool. But it was a texture mapped walls and stuff, so it kind of was moving towards what Wolfenstein is. But there was an EGA mode, which is a 16-color mode on the PC. So we were doing 16-color texture mapping. And the only reason why we did texture mapping is because a friend of mine, Paul Neurath, was the person who made Ultima Underworld. And I talked to him on the phone, and he basically told me that we're doing this technique called texture mapping. And I was like, what? Wow, yeah, we should do that. So he told me that a year before we ever used it. He told me that in 1990 while we were making Commander Keen.
Fantastic.
And then we waited about a year before we tried to do it.
and so you did. Now, of course, the name Wolfenstein comes from Castle Wolfenstein, which is, I think, one of your
1981,
yeah, one of your favourite Silas Marner.
Silas Warner.
Warner, sorry.
At Muse Software.
So,
yeah.
I just wondered, did you have any problems? Did you have to license it, or did you just use it?
Yeah, we basically had to find out who had the trademark and owned the IP. Muse Software went out of business, I think, in 1985. And so it was 1992, and we had just gotten the person to be our biz guy, who's Jay Wilbur, and so we had him track it down. And he tracked it down to a woman in Maryland had the IP because she just bought whatever was left of Muse. And Muse was based in Maryland. So basically, that's what we did. It was like $5,000
And that's
to buy Wolfenstein, to buy Castle Wolfenstein, the name.
That's fantastic. I wonder how important the fact that we all love shooting Nazis. I hope we all enjoy. I enjoy shooting Nazis. Is that how important do you think? Bear in mind, I mean, you could be shooting something.
Anybody.
How
yeah.
important do you think the Nazi setting was in terms of the kind of success of the game?
I think it was pretty. I think it was definitely one of the big factors because it's not a normal activity that you do in a game, right? In most games,
you haven't been down Ilkeston.
You're shooting, you're shooting aliens or you're shooting, other spies or whatever. So for this game, it was about, destroying the Nazi regime and getting, blasting your way out of a castle. And interestingly enough, I had no idea, but Jewish kids loved this game because it was revenge. And I didn't know that. I was, wow, okay, that makes sense,
That's fantastic. Were you at all, I mean, as you see this playing through, there are plenty of swastikas on screen, okay?
Yeah.
Were you aware that this game would perhaps be controversial by using that, the Nazi emblem?
I don't think we thought about that. I mean, we actually didn't pay much attention to what was happening outside our company. We just made the games. And so if you're inside of a Nazi castle, what are you going to see? Even blowing away dogs like that. If we actually thought about, would people hate doing that?
They're Nazi dogs.
Yeah, they're evil. There's a swastika underneath them. So
that's right. That's right. Now then, playing this. One of the first things that strike perhaps now is that where's the ceiling? Right. Okay. But that was a conscious decision.
That was to get that frame rate back then. This game had to run on a 286, preferably a 386. And so this game was also meant to go at 70 frames a second. And to do that, we could only texture map walls. And so the ceilings, the top and bottom, were rendered very quickly in 2 loops, basically. So we wanted to fill the rest of it. That was drawn first, and then the walls were drawn over it. And that basically got us the frame rate that we were looking for before Doom, which actually had more, horsepower to do.
Absolutely. But it's incredible how fast this is running in the
That's actually really slow compared to how fast it ran back then, because it was 70 frames a second.
That's impressive. I did ask you, you designed the levels, I think most of the levels, if not all of the levels. You'd obviously designed levels for many years for 2D games. Is there much difference designing levels for a 3D game? Is it a different kind of mindset?
Well, yeah, especially when you move into the Doom era. For Wolfenstein, we're still using 2D editing tools. The same editor that we had used for all of our games, which could have been like 20 games by the time we made Doom. We used that same editor that I had written for Wolfenstein because it was just an overhead, 2D matrix of colored blocks. So that was very simple. When you move into Doom, then it was way more complex because no one had done that before.
We'll come to Doom in a second.
Don't talk too much.
If anyone, we're coming to it. Right, 6 in front. I wanted to say that if any of you has played Wolfenstein the New Order, the current Wolfenstein game, there's a dream sequence where you get to play a level of this. I just wonder, have you played the new Wolfenstein?
No, I haven't.
Game?
I haven't played it.
I just wonder in general, when you see, there's obviously been many games in franchises that you've begun, do you see them on shelves and feel some affinity, or is it just, that's just some game that I didn't make that happens to have a name?
I love it. It's a franchise that I helped to create, and I think it's amazing that it's still going. And this is really a franchise that Silas Warner created in 1981. So we're just kind of carrying the torch, and it's not just us. I mean, it's the studios also that we had to develop the sequels, like we had Raven and Gray Matter, etc., working on the different versions of the game. So it's like there's a lot of developers that kind of look back at the retro gaming, at Castle Wolfenstein, and then look at this, and it's still, I think, a pretty unique idea of going around blasting Nazis.
It never gets old. So, John, Wolfenstein 3D, a joy to work on or a sorrow?
Well, why do I even have that in there?
Don't worry, we will have some sorrow, I'm sure. Right? Yeah.
Hey,
it's another joy! There you go. Okay. Right, okay. We will use a sorrow one, I'm sure. That's still okay, right? Okay, right. We perhaps move on now.
Thank you.
Who's going to clap doom? Let's clap doom! Woo!
Clap for doom.
That's not bad, is it? That's like coming on, you playing your favourite song, and people start clapping when they know it's your song. Okay, so Doom, you've gone from Nazis to demons. Okay. Now I believe that this is partly due to a love of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell us that you and John Carmack were big D&Ders. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, everyone at ID was a big D&D player. So John Carmack had invented a world that we'd played for years as characters, and he was the DM, and he was really good because it was a very political world. It was pretty complex. Unfortunately, at the end of it, I destroyed the world, and I released demons upon the material plane, and he obeyed his rules and destroyed his world because they just overran the whole thing and killed everybody. And
is that the point where you go, that could make a good game? Was it like that?
Basically, we kind of did that, and the funny thing is the reason the reason why the world was destroyed is because I wanted a daikatana. And that's what I got. That's what I got for letting the demons loose. So
we'll remember that in a
yeah.
bit. Okay. Right. Yes, we'll come back to that. Okay. Now, whilst this kind of clearly builds on Wolfenstein 3D as a 3D shooter, I understand it's a totally new engine. Tell us about particularly Carmack and yourselves, code. What were the breakthrough that allowed this game to be so revolutionary?
Well, first it was not using 2D matrix, which is what we've been using forever, and also just being able to have arbitrary walls, basically draw a line between 2 points that are in space, and that's very different. It's a very different what we call data structure in programming. It's a very different kind of data structure to use, and so we had to do that to be able to render a wall at any angle. In addition to doing it really fast, so it could be a fun game that has a good frame rate, and that's what the binary space partition, the BSP, helps us do.
I'm nodding. We're all nodding. Yes, totally.
So that helped the game go fast, and so we kind of combined those two things: the ability to have some light levels in there, and then active environmental parts like opening doors, burning slime, stairs that raise, all that kind of interactive stuff.
We've talked about the engine, but of course your big involvement was the actual level design.
I programmed all the environmental stuff too. So everything, if I needed something in the game, I programmed it in the game.
Hey, I want to ask you then, what do you think makes a good level in Doom? What was your thought processes to try and make it exciting for the player?
Lots of secrets, the pacing. Every designer has their own kind of flow through a level. So the pacing of the level, the exploration, it should be interesting to explore. You don't want to just explore square hallways. That's not fun at all. So you got to spend a lot of time making it look interesting. You gotta have challenge and puzzles, like where do I get the key card for this? It's very simple. The game is very simple with just picking up key cards and shooting demons and opening doors and getting to the exit. But the way that you combine them into something that's not that easy to do is what makes it.
I'm just saying the demons hurling fireballs. Have you got a particular favourite level that you're particularly sort of proud
Well, in Doom 2, I like level 26.
That's very precise, right?
That's the abandoned mines. In Doom 1, probably E1M7 in the first episode. And then
People are shouting out their favourite levels. There you go. It's like great hits. I see.
Okay.
I want to know at what point did you've had success with Wolfenstein 3D, but at what point did you think we have really got something here that's just going to go mad?
Like before we started working on the game, we knew.
I don't know. As you were working on it, did you think we have got? At what point do you think this is going to be phenomenal? We are going to clear up on this.
Probably as soon as we saw the engine on the screen. Like the first month we got the engine running and knew that it looked like nothing else. And we knew what we were going to make before we started on it. And we put out a press release the month we started working on the game, basically saying it's going to be the greatest thing ever. And just because we knew we kind of knew what we were going to be able to make, and that's what we worked on. And Doom was really the only game as a company that we basically said this game needs to be the best thing I can even imagine playing. And every other game was just like, let's make another game, and it'll be kind of cool like this. But it wasn't a challenge to us. Like, we challenged ourselves with Doom.
That's fascinating. And tell us a bit about the creatures, because when I was reading to prepare for this, I was fascinated to find that, did you actually create them in clay and you actually made some of these creatures? Tell us about that.
Yeah, the very first creatures were made in clay, and they were put on a turntable, so we could scan them in 8 different directions. With a video camera, and so that's how we got the characters in. Only a few, like the Doom guy and the Baron of Hell, the first boss. Those were the only 2 that we made. Well, actually, the Cyber Demon. We actually made the Cyber Demon as well. But what happened is, as soon as we started to animate them, all the clay ripped, and we had to fill in all the gaps. And we're like, we're done animating clay stuff.
Right.
So then we moved on to latex and then made it with fully movable pieces. And that was much easier.
I've moved on to latex, but that's a different talk. Okay, now this one, you actually published this yourself. Is that
Yes.
right? So was that a big risk? But I understand it was also a big reward. So tell us, who said we can do this on our own?
When we researched how we would get a game out, to fulfill it, we were working with Apogee Software, which was the distributor of all of our previous games. So when we decided to go on our own with it, we're like, well, we got to take orders and do tech support and duplicate discs and print manuals and put them in boxes and ship them to customers, and wow, it's a huge job. But there were lots of companies out that handled that stuff. So we basically found a company in Dallas called Digital Magnetics, and they did everything except for the tech support part. So we did that research immediately when we started to work on the game, and we found that partner immediately. And so what we did was we hired our tech support person in January of '93 to put together the materials that the order people would need. And so we were very prepared when we gave them the master discs to start duplicating. So all we did was basically take tech support calls, and the game was already handled by another company. So it was pretty easy to publish, and we didn't actually do any advertising for this game.
Really?
We in June of '93 we did a 1-page ad that just said "Go to hell." That's about it. It said "Doom, go to hell," and that was the end of our advertising for the game.
Fantastic. And I hope it's not too crass to ask, but you must have done all right financially with this. Was it all? I know your partner's here. Was it all fast cars and loose women?
Fast cars mostly.
There you go. Okay. But it really? So this, your company had arrived.
Yeah. Well, actually, with Wolfenstein, we did extremely well when that game immediately came out. The income of the company, times 10 probably, with Wolfenstein, and then with Doom, we stopped counting. Basically, so we did really well.
Feeling.
We just wanted to be able to keep on making games every day. That was the number one reason for challenging ourselves, but also, can we keep on doing this? This is awesome.
Well, clearly you were feeling unstoppable. Now, am I right in assuming that the front cover of Doom is this actually you?
It's not that cover. It's the cover of the PC version.
The PC one. Tell us. So, did you? This sounds a bit dramatic. You jumped onto the photo shoot, ripped off your shirt, and said, "I'll do it." Is
yeah,
right?
Basically, the guy that came over to do the illustration, what he does is he brought a model over to see how we think the cover should look, And so we brought this guy over, and he held one of the fake guns, and he was trying to get him to do some poses, and he had a camera to take pictures of this guy. And I'm just like, no, it needs to look like really hardcore, you know. and anyway, the guy didn't look. I was just like, no, get out of the way. And I just like ripped off my shirt and grabbed the gun, and I'm like, now you get down there and grab onto my arm like you're a demon.
I wonder what you're going to say then. Sorry, that's it.
Get down on the ground,
right,
dude.
Okay. Right. Fantastic what you're doing. I'm not even sure whether I really need to do this, but Doom, joy or sorrow? Does that go? Yay! Thank you so much. Okay, we're moving to 3 years hence now. We're moving on to Quake. Okay. Now again, I understand that the actual roots of this game was in Dungeons and Dragons. Wasn't Quake a character? Or was it Carmack's rather than yours?
Yeah,
Tell us about Quake and this whole D&D link.
Quake was, and it has nothing to do with the game. Originally it did. Quake was a character in the D&D campaign that we played that was an NPC. We didn't control him, but he was like this super badass. And we sometimes saw him. He was too awesome to see, pretty much. And he would go around solving problems. And so we actually, after Commander Keen, we wanted to make a game called Quake Fight for Justice. And we started to work on that for about 2 weeks and decided, you know what, Quake needs to look way cooler than this stupid top-down RPG thing. So we just decided, let's wait for the future and do Quake. So we didn't do Quake then, which was the beginning of 1991. We just put it on hold. Then in 1995, we decided, now we can do Quake. It'll be full 3D, and now we can do the real thing, which was supposed to be a D&D game, which is what we started to concept for making this game.
That's interesting, because, I mean, you done Doom 2. You could have, and in these days, Doom 3, Doom 4.
Yeah.
So what was your original vision for Quake? Why not just do, well, hey, this is doing well, we'll knock out another Doom. What was your original vision for Quake?
The original idea was kind of to do a medieval game, and probably not a first-person shooter, but something more like Darksiders, which is a third-person kind of fighting game. So the idea was not to like have a gun held up in front of your face, but to travel around with different weapons in your hand. And you, as a character, were kind of like Quake. You were awesome. You had a huge hammer that you could throw, and you would have this thing called a Soulgate cube that would kind of rotate around you in the air at a distance, and it had its own personality and its own kind of brain, and would decide to help you attack enemies. And you kind of had to do that to make it happy, so it would keep on helping you. And so the environments are similar. Like this medieval environment is very similar to the kind of environment that was in the original game. But it took so long to make the engine that we didn't have the manpower to actually do anything gameplay wise in it. So we kind of waited for the engine to get done. And by the time the engine was done, the team was just so tired that we couldn't put the effort into game design innovation.
I find that very interesting, and I'm even going to give you a quote. Yeah, I find it very interesting what you've said. Here's a quote from Scott Miller, who's the founder of Apogee Software. He says, "I feel like things started to break down with Quake, as the focus on tech meant that gameplay remained stagnant." Now, do you agree? And because the man who's responsible for such gameplay, did you feel a bit marginalised at this?
Yeah, well, we had a big company meeting at which, in November of '95, we had a company meeting where we decided, are we going to try and innovate with game design, or do we need to just finish this game? And most of the company decided we just need to get this thing done. We are so mentally done with this thing. So we did. We spent 7 months, and it was 7 days a week for 7 months, working really hard to get the game. It was like, okay, we're going to put Doom weapons in this engine that we've written and get this thing out. And so we did as good as we could with that decision, which is why Quake is a pretty good game. We didn't give up on it. We basically decided we're doing this, so let's do it as well as we can. And so that's what happened. That's why it's not a completely different kind of game.
I'm interested that whilst obviously there's a single player in Quake, is that he's kind of remembered for really pushing the online multiplayer. And I know you did that in Doom as well. But I wonder at that point,
internet multiplayer,
of course, yeah. Is that I wondered at what point did you think, hey, I think there's a future in this online shooting lark then?
Oh, we knew that from Doom. the day that we got multiplayer working, we're like, this is how you play a game. Deathmatch was a completely new way of playing at a high frame rate, and it was just super visceral. So we knew, like, this is it. We'll do the single player thing because it's fun to have a story and to explore levels, you know, the way that you have fun in Zelda exploring environments, you still want to do that, but you also want the crazy, hectic gameplay of multiplayer. So, so that's, you know, we knew that was the future, and it was just like, it was going from LAN to internet, you know, and so that was our innovation, was to not just do a full 3D engine, but also to do internet multiplayer.
And am I right in thinking that you actually coined the word deathmatch?
Yeah.
Is that so? Tell us about. Are you quite proud that you created your own word?
I know.
Is that, not many people can say that they created their own word.
Yeah.
So did it just pop in you said this is a deathmatch?
Yeah, I was walking to my office, and we just got this mode working, and I was like, what are we going to call this thing? Like, you have to say it's a certain mode, and you know it's multiplayer, but that doesn't sound cool. So I was like, well, you're like killing each other, and it's like you're having a match, you know, like a
kill match. Yeah.
And I thought kill match isn't cool, you know. And I was like, death match sounds cool. Like one word, death match. That's it. And also frag. The word frag. Kevin Cloud came up with using the word frag, which is short for fragmentation grenade. And Jib was Adrian Carmack's contribution from Giblets.
Oh, right,
it's not Gib like Andy Gibb. It's Jibs like Giblet.
Thanks for mentioning the Bee Gees there. There you go. Okay, now I'm interested in this one because whilst Quake was still a huge success, you've just talked about it being quite a compromise as well, and of course you left. So I think this is the one I'm genuinely interested in. Quake, a joy or a sorrow to work on? He's having a think.
It's tough.
Oh, is that both? Is that right? Is that a bit of both? Is that what you said? It's a bit of both. All right, bit of both. Okay, that's interesting. So you do look back at this with certainly mixed feelings.
Yeah, just it was tough, and it was the game that made me decide to leave the company. Even though it was a really great game, I knew that well, we're not going to do anything new if we're going to make these kinds of decisions. So that's why.
Okay, well you did leave. And the next game we've got, and I hope I pronounce it right, is Daikatana.
Daikatana.
Daikatana, I can't pronounce it. Daikatana. Okay. Now, Daikatana came out in 2000. However, let's start the story earlier. You'd left
1996.
And I think you sort of started work on this early
97, yeah.
Right. So, first of all, what was your original plan for the game? And were you full of optimism?
Yeah, I was full of optimism, and for me, when I looked back at the games that we'd made, I was like, why am I playing a game where on the last level I'm still killing the guys on the first level? And it's just content, you don't have enough content. So I wanted to make a game that was like a roller coaster. I wanted to have something that had 4 episodes, and every episode had a ramp from the first level all the way to the last level, and then you kind of restart and you're in a different environment. Different monsters, different weapons, different power-ups, like the whole game. It's like playing 4 games in a row. And that's what this game turned out to be. So that was like the high-level idea behind the game was 4 games in one, everything different per episode, try and tell a story that's interesting, and this game was meant to be an expert-level game. It wasn't supposed to be, here's a game for people that have never played a shooter. It was supposed to be, experts play this. So that's why you have robotic mosquitoes and robotic frogs, and why you have to keep your sidekicks alive. That makes it really hard when not just you have to keep yourself alive, but you have to keep your sidekicks alive. That makes a really, really difficult challenge. And
I mean, that is an interesting idea, keeping your sidekicks alive. People that have played Daikatana probably would like to see those sidekicks dead.
Yeah.
Quite often. John,
they did see them dead. They saw them dead a lot.
What happened there? Did that idea not quite come off in the way you hoped it would?
No, actually, it did really well, except for the AI. The AI had bugs in it, and sometimes the characters would get killed and just doors slamming on them, and they wouldn't get things like they should. So the game had issues with the AI programming, and if I wanted to make it easier, at least at the beginning, with not robotic stuff that's really small, they could have been really huge, and but anyway, it was mostly the AI. The rest of the game was pretty cool. I liked the game, and every time I get a lot of email from people telling me how great the game is, and they love it. But the people that say they don't like it usually didn't play it.
That's an interesting one. Now, we can't really talk about Daikatana without talking about a certain a certain advert. John Romero's about to make you his bitch. Now, so I'm giving you the floor here. Is that, did you have anything to do with this advert? Was the first time you saw it literally when you, oh, apparently I'm making everyone my bitch. How did this come
that was actually a woman came up with that.
That's the blame of woman. Obviously a woman.
She did. The woman that came up with all of our Quake stuff, our the Quake logo, the packaging, the font, all that stuff. I had her work on Daikatana and Anachronox and Deus Ex. And so she worked on the advertising, and she came up with several things. This is just one of them. And the person I had as my marketing director thought this was awesome, and he showed it to me, and I was just like, dude, I wouldn't actually say that. I don't ever say I'm going to make someone my bitch. I always just tell them I'm going to kill them, you know?
Okay, yeah. John Romero is about to kill you.
Yeah.
Good work. Yeah, good work.
And so I would never say that, and so he just said, don't be a beep.
Right, yeah.
And I'm like, well, you're the marketing guy, go ahead.
So
that's my problem is I didn't say no.
I was looking back. Well, there you go. So off in the way, John.
There it is.
I'm interested that looking back, was the controversy I don't think was about sexist language, which would be a bit hypocritical considering how many boob babes were at E3. But I think, is it just like, John, you are getting too cocky. You're getting, we'd say, too big for your boots. Is that what created the backlash, you think? People thinking that, John Romero?
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's that, and also like that, and then suck it down.
Yeah,
probably not a good combination there.
It's not a Saturday. It probably is a Saturday night out in Wolves, actually.
Well, okay. The marketing went crazy. You know, the marketing machine started when I started to make the game, which should never happen. You should always have your marketing turn on like 6 months before a game comes out. So yeah, it was starting to get marketed immediately, and so that got people tired of it because finally, 3 years later, really, the game's finally coming out instead of telling people 6 months before it comes out. So it was bad timing on the marketing.
Okay. And dare I ask then, do you think at this stage, bear in mind you have had a huge amount of success, do you think you started believing your own hype?
Say that again?
Do you think you started believing that, you know what, I am the greatest designer?
Oh, no.
You think you started?
No.
You did not believe your own hype?
No. I mean, I just want to make a game. And so my focus was, I want to make this game. I'm focused on this game. Tom is focused on his game. War Inspector's focused on his game. That's what we do. And I just wanted to get the game done. And it was really difficult because I hired a bunch of people that had never made a game before. So the whole, like, it's actually a testament to how hard the team worked that we released a game by people who had never made one before. After 3 years, so yeah.
Looking back, so obviously, if I said that the reception was mixed, that would be quite diplomatic, I think. Looking back on it now, do you feel that it was unfairly slated?
You know, I mean, what's unfair? It was marketed in a way that it shouldn't have been marketed, probably, and the expectations were almost impossible to fulfill. Like after making Doom and Quake and everything, like, you gonna make a better game? Okay. So that was difficult, and with people who had never made one versus the veteran team of 15 years per person before. So, yeah, it was not going to happen. I wasn't trying to make the best game ever, though. I was trying to make a game that I think would be a good progression in difficulty from, you know, Quake being a full 6 Degrees of Freedom 3D game to more of an expert version of that, but with a lot of content. That was the high level. It wasn't like I'm going to make a game better than everybody else's game. Okay.
Now, I'm interested in this one. So, Daikatana, which I can almost say now, was it to work on a joy or a sorrow, John?
Both.
Yeah. Both again. Oh, there you go. This that we're looking at is Gauntlet 7 Sorrows. Okay? So, you see what I did with the sorrow? Do you see what I did? It's all linked in. All joined up thinking. Okay, I wondered, did you spend a large portion of your youth playing Gauntlet in the arcade?
Not a large, but I did play Gauntlet. I played it and loved it. You know, in fact, one of the people on the Gauntlet development team made Apple II games, and so I was like excited to track him down, Bob Flanagan.
Yeah.
But the Gauntlet, you know, as you can see, and with Daikatana, you can see like just some good graphics and good action and gameplay and stuff. It's probably not the best game ever, especially this game the way it turned out, because I didn't actually finish it.
Yeah.
I had a much bigger storyline, and it was something that was going to take probably 3 months longer than it should have. And Midway basically said, no, it's not going to take that long. we're going to cut this game in pieces and ship it.
That's
So
obviously hugely. I just when you played Gauntlet in the arcade, did you have a favourite character? Were you the wizard or the warrior or the elf?
Not really. It didn't matter which one they played.
I was always Fire of the Valkyrie. What does that say about me?
Yeah,
should I be concerned? I don't. Okay, so you joined Midway in 2003.
Yep.
Were you initially, because you've just alluded there that it didn't necessarily end well, were you initially filled with optimism? This was your chance to revisit a much-loved franchise.
Yeah, I was very excited to be able to actually develop the franchise with a great backstory and make these characters way more alive than they were in the arcade versions. Because even with Dark Legacy and the other Gauntlets, they weren't fully developed characters or even good backstories. So I brought on Josh Sawyer, J.E. Sawyer, who's a great RPG game designer, to come on and basically help develop the story and the characters, and he did an incredible job. We had an amazing set of cinematics to go with the story, and then we had classic Gauntlet gameplay, which is this, with the camera. I came up with the idea of having the camera following the group and be very cinematic looking, but still having lots of action. And when they decided to hack the game up, I left with the studio head, and then 2 weeks later Josh quit too because he saw what was happening to the game, which was just getting chopped into pieces. So it didn't get a good Metacritic rating because it didn't turn out that good.
Yeah. I wondered that whole challenge of revisiting a much-loved classic. Tell us about making that balance between kind of keeping what made the game good in the first place, but bringing enough new things in to make you want to play something different. Is that a difficult balance to find?
I didn't think it was that difficult. It was at the time. It was, what is the competition, which was Champions of Norath was like one of the big competitions at the time. And so what can we do? That's still faithful to the original, makes it continue the really cool gameplay in dungeons. But what are we not going to do? Like, I immediately threw out the random dungeons, because that was just going to make the game way harder to finish, trying to program that. So we design the environments, specifically the way they are. They don't change, But really just getting, it's easier when you have an established franchise to basically go and make another iteration that's cooler. It's way easier to do that just because it's already there. You don't have to invent from nothing. So this wasn't that difficult.
I'm interested because I found out that actually you've alluded that it didn't end well, right?
Yeah.
But I understand that you and Josh created new characters, Lancer and help me out. Was another very consummate professional. Lancer and Tragedian,
yeah.
But they were then cut from the final game. Was this Midway being really rather arsey, saying, right, if you're gone, we're even going to take your characters out of the game?
Yeah, basically Midway sent a hatchet, like a hack team in. So we left, they sent a team in to come and just hatchet up the game, and the people who were developing the full game then had to tear it apart, Some of them quit, but this happens in game development sometimes. If it's not your company and it's not your game, all kinds of business people can make decisions for you. And
did this not, after this experience, did you fall out of love with making games in the modern industry?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, when I left Midway, I founded an MMO company immediately right after that, and was making an amazing game for 5 years.
Maybe we'll come to that. So for the final time then, and was working on Gauntlet 7 Sorrows a joy or a sorrow? I think we actually... Yeah! It was worth me making that sign. Actually, just on this... Thank you so much. Yeah. Just on this sign, is that I'm dying to know... That, you see, that's John's face there being shot at the end of Doom 2.
The end of Doom 2,
I wonder, did someone kick you very hard in the balls for this face?
They pixel edited that themselves. That was an Easter egg that I didn't know about.
Really?
The artist put that head in the game at night when I wasn't looking. And they didn't know that I found it. So that's why, does everyone here know that when you go into that final room, it says, to win the game, you must kill me, John Romero, but it says it backwards, and it sounds demonic. And it's there because I found that head while I was coding the sound effects for the boss character, and I saw that it wasn't a dot anymore, it was my head. And I knew the artists were going to tell me after the game shipped that they snuck that in, and we got to laugh on me. So I recorded that and stuck it in the game, and like the next day immediately American McGee comes to work and goes, ooh, background scary thing, I'm going to reverse it. And he listened to it and he just told everybody, so the whole thing was up, but we kept it in because it was cool.
And ladies and gentlemen, he's clearly made me his bitch, John Romero. Okay, I think we've got a roving mic, but now we've got plenty of time for questions. I think plenty of time. Questions from the audience. Can we do it in the, I am a lecturer, so can we do it in the traditional view of putting your hand up? Would anybody like to ask a question? I'm a little scared of you, John. Yes, over here. You'd have to shout, I'm afraid.
So, in Doom, whenever I hear an imp behind a wall, it always sounds like my stomach's rumbling. Can you talk a bit about how you made the sounds in that game? Also, the famous shotgun sound. I think you were involved.
Yeah. So the sound effects in Doom were made by Bobby Prince, who was our audio person. He composed the music, but he also created all the sound effects. The sound effects were mostly from a series called The General from Sound Design. And so it was a bunch of CDs that we bought, like lots of CDs, and these CDs would have hundreds of sounds on each one. And so what Bobby did was, for the imp, that was a pig, and for I think that was the pinky, that was his noise, and then there was like a camel for the imp, and so there's a bunch of different like animal sounds that he used.
Did he go to the zoo and
no, they're all on the CD.
They're just the camel on the CD.
CD full of animal sounds. So he just picked animal sounds that he thinks would fit demons.
Smashing. Thank you. Well, there you go. Well, that's okay. We've got any more hands? Any more hands? I've got this person here and over there. Yes, please.
It's sort of a techie question. I've always heard terminology that the engine in Doom is a 2.5D engine, and that's partially to why you can't have a room above a room. I've never really understood the technical.
What is 2.5D?
Yeah, so a 2.5D. It's called a 2.5D engine because when we drew the levels, it's 2D. So we just drew them overhead, and there was no layers to it. So it was just one layer, even though it looks like there's stairs going up and stairs going down and there's windows and stuff. Those were all done just with information that are held between the lines, I guess you would call it. They're called sectors. And so like a group of 4 lines that makes a box, inside the box would be information for that sector. And that sector would say, how high is the floor, how high is the ceiling, what's the light level, and what are the textures on the top and the bottom in that sector, and what special effect is going on, like blinking lights or whatever. So we would draw overhead. Everything in Doom is done just overhead, so there isn't any vertical layering in the game until we go to Quake. Then it's full 3D, and then it gets way more complex.
Thank you. Was there a question over here? Yes, over there, and then I'll come to you later.
It's my understanding that you had a part in the fact that Doom was able to load up custom game files as well, player-made WAD files. You call them.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on how the community is still active? They're still making WAD files for the original.
Yeah. So
do you have any particular favourite WAD files as well?
when we were making Doom, Wolfenstein had come out, and in the process of making, we used a lot of the same tools. So when we were making Commander Keen, we used this level editor to create the levels and to keep. We were shipping games on discs that were really load 100 and something K, so like per side. So we didn't have that much space, and to fit all of the stuff on the discs, we had to keep everything as compressed as we could with zip type technology. So to keep the levels small, the level editor would compress the levels into a small piece of data. So like a whole level in Commander Keen that in memory would take up a lot of space, on disk it took up very small amounts of space. And we did that only so it would fit on a disk. Well, what happened is people loved Wolfenstein so much and Commander Keen so much that they started to figure out how to decompress those files so they could make new ones or modify existing ones. And they did that, and it was really hard to do because it used part of the compression was stuck inside the code. So they had to actually uncompress the code and pull out the part that they needed to uncompress the data files. It was insane. So when I saw that the people were going to the lengths that they were going to try and get at our data, I was like, we need to open this whole thing up. People love playing, making levels with this engine, because with the Commander Keen engine, we had kind of decoupled the game from the data, so you could, like anyone else, could make new data and make new levels that way. So we did that. That's the way we designed Doom as well. But with Doom, we kept everything as uncompressed as possible, so it'd be easy for everybody to make whatever they wanted. Redo the walls, make new levels, change the sound effects, whatever, except for the code. But they actually figured out how to do that too. They had a tool that would modify the executable as well. But we basically opened it up just so people could do that. And then we immediately saw like Star Wars Doom, Aliens Doom, and one of my favorites was a level called UAC Dead, which did a ton of modifications to the line segment data, the actual low-level data that even we wouldn't be able to modify in our editor. This person went and modified all kinds of stuff, so you're like walking on invisible floors and seeing through stuff, and like really cool effects.
I want to know, are you a mod maker, and do you want John to say your level is ace? Is that why you asked that question?
I'm a programmer, but I've not made anything.
So he's trying to get you to do it. I've got a question at the front here.
Two, if that's okay, one from me, one from my daughter. I'll let you guess which one's which.
Okay.
In Doom, enemies of the same species won't fight each other, but the humans will fight amongst themselves. Is that some kind of social commentary on man's inhumanity?
Oh, very profound.
Or am I overthinking? And the second question is, the hole on the back of the cacodemon, is that where he does a poo?
Yes, it is. Yes.
That's really your question, sir.
Yes, and the imp too. If he's laying down, you can see
You've
it.
really thought this through, haven't you? That's it.
Kevin Cloud drew it. That's his fault.
What about the whole commentary on the...
So the infighting, we thought that was pretty cool, and actually you don't see that in games anymore. But we used bullets. Anything that shot a bullet was going to get fired back on, because it was like, bullets were pretty bad. It's like, oh, high tech, kill the guy. Yeah. And so anyone with a bullet was going to get attacked by anything else, no matter what, even other humans. But then what we did is we kept just interspecies attacking. So a cacodemon could hit another cacodemon, but they're not going to fight each other. But a cacodemon hits a Baron of Hell, now they're in a fight. Yeah. Right? So they're throwing green fireballs, and they're throwing, their plasma balls. And so we did that because we wanted to have a ton of monsters coming at you and have a lot of action, and also just to show the chaos of demons, in a game. Like, stuff is just, they don't care. They will just attack anything. So that's basically why we did that.
Okay, I've got time for two more questions, so I've got one at the front and then one there. I'm so sorry. Yes, Bane, and then you, sir.
Any Doom, what was the whole purpose of the rabbit?
So, so the rabbit at the end, Daisy, is the name of that rabbit in the very end of Doom that kind of scrolls across, and that was just to show how evil the demons were. They came to Earth and they would stick a bunny's head on a stake. You got to kill them, obviously, for doing that.
Yeah. I wonder what you're going to ask when you ask about a rabbit. Thank you, Bane. You've reassured me hugely, sir. Yes.
I was just wondering, did you ever get to visit the set of the Doom movie?
No, I never visited the set. And the movie was so bad that I think they're remaking it.
That's it. Well, on that note, I've got a few thanks. First to the mighty Martin Carroll. Yay! For doing all the videos. Doing all the video work.
Good work on
Thank you very much. To Craig and Chris and all the Revival team for putting on such fantastic effort. You lot for coming in this hellish heat. Well done. And of course, most of all, to our special guest who's come all a long, long way to be with us, John Romero.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
And just before we finish, I've been told to say there are posters on sale, I think either side, which I don't. Are you contractually bound to sign them? I'm not sure.
They might be
Form
signed.
a queue behind me because I want my sign as well. So there are some posters, and we've got Andrew Hewson here in about 10 minutes. And enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you. Cheers.
All right.
John, that was a pleasure.